Welcome to Spectral Shadows, where the darkness whispers and the unseen lurks. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it? Because horror feels different at night, especially when you're alone. Those who love their mother, like, share, and comment. Subscribe, if you dare. Now turn off the lights, and let's begin. Story number 1. Hi, Dad. The man's face was lined but still handsome, his eyes warm and welcoming as his mouth spread into a bright, even-toothed smile. Hello there, Dolly. It's so good. He broke off in a deep bark of a laugh. What am I doing? Give me a hug. I smiled at him, and then we embraced. It was awkward at first, but then it turned into something like a warm and comforting hug. I felt a twinge of pain in my chest. Was this the right thing? I'd felt so certain before, but now I wasn't as sure. Pulling back, he put his arm around my shoulders and ushered me into their house. Mary, Dolly is here, hun. A woman's voice lilted from a distant room. Be right out. Taking me into the living room, he gestured for me to sit down on the sofa. Can I get you anything? A drink or a snack? Or if you want, you can stay for dinner tonight. I felt myself flushing a little. Oh no, I'm okay. I appreciate it. I have somewhere to be later, and I don't want to impose. The man frowned slightly, his eyes looking sad. You can't impose, honey. We're your parents. I know it may not feel like that, what with how you were raised and all, but it's still true. I smiled awkwardly at him. I appreciate that, and I get what you're saying. This is all just a lot for me, so maybe it's something we build up to. He nodded and was about to say more when she entered the room. She had to be at least 20 years older than me, but she could have been my slightly older sister just by looking at her. Throwing a smiling backward glance at her husband, she rushed over to me and gave me a big hug. Oh, doll, we've missed you so much. She leaned back to look me in the face, tears in her eyes. Thank you so much for reaching out to us. There's been such a hole in our life without you here. Swallowing, I nodded. I felt like it was time. Returning my nod, she sat down next to me. We've been waiting and hoping since you turned 18. Her eyes widened as she put her hand on my arm. That's not a criticism or guilt trip. We understand that you probably grew up with a very dim view of us. The state wouldn't let us contact you until you were an adult, giving you to that woman for all your formative years, no doubt filling your head with, hun, don't get worked up now. Shelby is her family, the only mother she's ever really known. You speaking ill of her won't bring us closer together. He shifted his gaze to me. Dolly, you have to understand. We don't blame you or the government or even Shelby. Not really. We know what it looked like back then. My mother shook her head violently. Bigotry is what it was. Ignorance. They claimed we were going to kill you, that the ritual was... She snorted. Some kind of satanic bullshit. Turning back to me, tears were spilling down her cheeks now. We weren't going to harm a hair on your precious head. You believe that, don't you? I shifted uncomfortably and ran my tongue along the plastic molded against the roof of my mouth. I mean, I have heard stuff, but would I be here now if I didn't want to at least give you a chance? The man leaned forward, smiling again. That's very gracious of you, very open-minded, and it's all we ask. His lips tightened slightly, and speaking of Shelby, how is she? Is she okay with you doing this? I sucked in a shaky breath. Actually, she's dead. Died last month. The woman gave my arm a squeeze. Well, I had my problems with her, as you can tell, but I am sorry for your loss. Squinting, she caught my eye. Was she a good mother to you? Did she raise you well? I nodded. She was. Yeah, nobody's perfect, but she was good to me, always looked out for me. Dolly, if you're reading this, then I'm dead. That sounds dramatic, like a line from a bad movie, but it's still true. And truth is the point of this letter, mostly. I could waste time and words telling you how much you mean to me, how I think you saved me, at least as much as I could be saved. But hopefully our time together has shown you how much I love you. And if it hasn't, well, a posthumous letter won't be the thing to do it. So instead, this letter will focus on the truth. I've always been honest with you, partially because when the time came, as it now has, I wanted you to know you could trust me to tell you the truth. Because while I've always been honest with you, I've also always made clear there were things you were not ready to know. For the longest time, I have tried to find some other way to resolve this, something that wouldn't require you to know the worst parts of this or put you at risk. Unfortunately, I've come to the conclusion that there is no other way to protect you than to tell you the rest and put you in danger, because there is a clock hidden beneath your skin. It has been there most of your life, and I can hear it winding down, the ticks growing sluggish, the talks unsteady and unsure. If it stops before we stop this, you will be utterly lost in a way that would make death seem like an endless blessing. Therefore, we should erase the clock that has been placed in you. And the path to doing that is hard, but very simple. You must kill your parents. Tell us about yourself. My father grinned at me. I admit we've done a little internet snooping to find out what we could, but there's so much more we want to know. Glancing between them, I gave a tentative smile. Sure, like what? My mother leaned closer to me. Well, you're at university, right? What have you been studying? I shrugged non-committally. A bunch of things, really. I love English classes, that, and philosophy. Not sure what I'm actually going to do when I'm done, though. The man chuckled. We were the same way when we were your age, casting about, full of passion but lacking clarity and direction. He looked past me to his wife, his smile widening. But that all came with time. I nodded. Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure it will. For me. The woman put her hand back, this time on my leg. You're thinking about it, aren't you? I glanced at her, slightly bewildered. Looking back at my father, I saw a dark cloud of irritation growing in his face. Leave her be, Mar. She's doing us a kindness coming to visit. Stop pressuring her. Mary shook her head at him, but her eyes never left mine. No, I can see it. She's thinking about what we did to her. She thinks we're monsters. I frowned. No, I didn't say that. I do want to know more about it. And I glanced between them. Are you still in that cult? My father shot a hard look at my mother before turning back to me. It's a fair question, Dolly. And while to call it a cult would be somewhat inaccurate and reductive, I won't quibble over semantics. It was a group we were a part of, and that we have not been a part of for quite some time, since you were taken from us, as a matter of fact. She gave my leg a hard squeeze, and we are so sorry for everything you went through, losing us for so many years, being raised by that woman. She let out a small, pretty sigh. And yes, for taking your eye teeth. My father sucked in a small breath as he studied me a moment. You did know, then, that we took them in the ritual? I nodded, tears forming in the corners of my eyes. I did. Did you remember it? Or did she tell you? I glanced up at him. She told me. His face was unreadable. What else did she tell you about it? About us? I shrugged. Not a ton. Growing up, she told me you were both in a cult. That she figured out what was going on enough to call the police and interrupt some ritual. That as your aunt, she was my closest living relative and managed to get custody pretty quick. Then she adopted me the next year. And you both went to prison for a few months and then were back out on long-term probation. that you couldn't contact me until your sentences ran out, or I turned 18 and initiated it. But a lot of it, she kept telling me there were things I didn't need to know. He was studying me now like a cat pondering a small bird. Did she say she figured it out, or that she knew? That she was part of this cult herself? Pushing my tongue against the back of my teeth, I forced myself to meet his gaze. She said she was part of it, that she changed her mind after the ritual started, after she heard me screaming. She called 911 and then slipped away. My mother snorted. She betrayed us and wants to make it sound like she did something noble. I'm sorry, honey, but I'm very glad she's dead. I half expected my father to snap at her, but he was still focused on me with his lamplight stare. Finally, he nodded and smiled again. I feel like what you said is the truth. I'd have known if you were lying, and that would have really disappointed us. I nodded, hands clutched and trembling in my lap. I'm glad you... What did they do about your teeth? I stopped, startled by my mother's sudden question. What? Your eye teeth. They aren't missing, but they are a bit darker than the rest. She pushed a bit closer and squinted at my mouth. What did they put in there? A partial. I've had a partial since Shelby got me. They couldn't do anything permanent while I was still growing so much. I'm supposed to go in to get fitted with ceramic implants this summer. She beamed at me. That'll be lovely, dear. She looked past me. Won't it, honey? Oh, yes. That's just the thing. I expected him to be smiling when I looked in his direction, but his face was still stony. Another question I have, though, if you don't mind. My heart was pounding so loud, it took me a second to make out what he was actually saying. I hope they didn't notice my delay, or just chalked it up to nervousness. Either way, I was in it now. I just had to be careful. Yeah, sure. He leaned forward in his seat toward me. Did she tell you to come here? I'd like to tell you I'm not to blame for what happened to you. Not because I want to lie to you, but because I want so desperately for it to be true. But the truth is that my nephew and that thing he calls his wife would never have been able to correctly execute the ritual without my instruction. Yes, I had an attack of conscience and called the police, but it was too late to stop it. The methods I'd laid out granted boons to all three of us as part of the ritual and bargain, and I could feel my reward flowing through me, even as I lied to the 911 operator about everything but where you were and who had you. I left that night before they brought you out, and while I still heard your cries, the fact that I didn't want to be there to see it should have been warning enough. Maybe it was, and yet a part of me still planned all of this, keeping the knowledge I had gained while still forging some illusory path to redemption by raising you and keeping you away from them. I don't know myself anymore, because I'm not the same as I was then in many ways. Time and my love for you have softened some sharp edges while creating new ones. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. I have to avoid sentimentality and get to the point. The point is that the three of us, along with a few inconsequential hangers-on that got nothing but criminal records, made a deal with a being from another dimension, a place called Incarnata. This creature is not a demon per se, though depending on your perspective, that may come down to semantics. It is a deal-maker and a trickster, however, often working within the framework of trading for something of value, something you love. In a sane world, parents giving their child to this thing would work fine, as they would love their child. For myself at the time, and for those two, we had little interest in or attachment to you. That's where my clever second method for imbuing you with value to this thing came in. There is magic, very old primal magic, that relies on suffering. The ritual I constructed required a token sacrifice up front. Your two eye teeth. that, among other things done and said, set the contract between us and it. The idea being that over the next 20 years or so, you would be made to suffer terribly, building up a great reservoir of pain, of potential power to be tapped. This would make you very valuable when your time, your clock, ran out and you were collected. I put a kink in that plan by having you taken from them. It wouldn't have been much of an obstacle by itself. But they are afraid of me, and don't fully appreciate how badly things will go for them without a proper payment when it comes due. My nephew asked for power, and he received it. I understand he is capable of notable, if pedestrian, forms of magic from time to time. His wife asked for beauty, health, and youth, and while this is foolish and vain, she is not an idiot. She made herself very hard to kill by most means. I asked for knowledge, the thing I'd always wanted most in life. The funny part is, once I had it, instead of wanting more, I wanted much less. I understood and saw myself differently, saw how small and pathetic I was, we all were, and I understood how pointless and terrible it would be for you to have a lifetime of suffering. So I took you in. At first I tried to make amends out of guilt and self-loathing, but in time it was done more out of love for you. I'm sure you deserved a much better mother, but no one else could have kept them from you. While they don't fully understand how dangerous not inuring you through pain over the years will be for them, they have some dim knowledge that it was the plan and should be seen through. If not for their ignorance and arrogance, their fear of what's coming might have overridden their fear of me. I don't tell you these things now capriciously. They are part of my last best gifts to you, and my hope is collectively they will be enough to set you free of the thing we bound you into all those years ago. Read every bit of this carefully and thoroughly, but above all, please pay attention to my advice that follows. First, never directly lie to them. They will be able to tell. You can be vague, you can lie by omission, you can play semantic games. They may not trust you, but it will not be sensed the way a pure lie will. And my hope is their stupidity and arrogance will make them reckless in the face of anything other than a red flag. Second, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm suggesting what needs to happen to get a certain result. If they ask you, did I tell you what to do or did I send you? I'm telling you now that the truthful answer is no. I am providing information, not directing you to do any particular thing. Have this firmly in mind at all times. No, she didn't tell me to do anything, and now she's dead. My father nodded and smiled, his face relaxing a little. Good. I want this to be your decision. He stood up and gestured for me to do the same. Would it be okay if I showed you something? I rose, uncertainly. Yeah, I guess so. Great, come with me. Hun, you come too so you can see her face. I think she's going to love it. I heard my mother get up behind me and I tried to speed up, so I was closer to him without drawing attention to it. We were going down a long, wide hallway now, and on the right there was now a door. Had it been there a moment before? I felt my heart pounding louder as he reached out to the ornate knob and turned it. This is your room, Dolly. We made it a few years ago. Well, I made it, but your mother certainly had input on what it should look like. He grinned at me. I guess it's outdated for you now, but we can change it. It might seem strange to you, but we've dreamed of having you with us since the night we lost you, and I saw his arm rising up, slowly and casually, like he was going to put it around my shoulders as he told me what a loved little girl I was. More likely, he was going to shove me into that magical vault and torture me for however long they had left. So I did the only reasonable thing, the thing that my real mother had suggested, not told, for me to do. I grabbed his arm and I bit him. Third, along with this letter, you will find a package. When you open it, you'll understand why, when you were a teenager, and I had set upon this plan after exhausting other alternatives. I started carrying you to a dentist 4 hours away. I needed a skilled crafter of dental prosthetics that would not ask questions when I paid him well and asked for strange things. The partial plate inside that box is molded after your current one, but instead of artificial eye teeth, you will find mine. By this point, you will most likely know that I died in a fire of my own setting, and if the authorities have told you that I appear to have had 2 of my teeth recently removed prior to my death, well, now you can consider that mystery solved. What is this point of this macabre memento? Well, it could be worn if you were ever to visit your parents. Unlike a normal partial, it has a titanium framework that makes it very durable even under extreme pressure or torque. The teeth have also been imbued by me with certain traits that, if you and only you were to wear them and bite your parents, they would find themselves both immediately incapacitated and in material breach of one of the pledges of the arrangement between us and the entity. With me dead, if you puncture both of them with my eye teeth, the contract binding you will be dissolved, and you will be free. Oh, God. See? The thing that was my father fell to his knees before collapsing on the floor, shuddering and thrashing. I was already turning to deal with my mother, but I was too slow. She slammed into me, knocking me to the ground. I tried to roll over, but she was fast, already crawling on top of me, a long knife in one hand, and her face twisted into a hateful mask. You stupid fucking little bitch. You come into my house and think you can get us? She spat in my face. I'll skin you every day and have him grow it back for me. When it comes, you'll be bursting with more pain than if we'd had you the whole time. She had straddled me, using her knees to pin my arms while she held the knife to my throat. She was fairly strong for her size, but the size was still an issue. She was thin and petite, and not ready for me to thrust my hips and torso into the air, throwing her forward while my open mouth rose to meet her. Her squeal nearly burst my eardrum as I bit deeply into her smooth left cheek. You bitch, what is? My mother fell over, spasming next to her husband as I got up and stepped away from them. Do you have something to offer? Letting out a squeak, I turned around to see a hulking mass of shadows at the far end of the hall. No, I just want to go. I'm free, right? It paused a moment, and though I couldn't see its face, I felt like it was considering me and the thrashing forms further down the hall. Yar. There was to be no sharing of boons between them, and I smell the gift of knowing on both of them now. The contract is void, and you are released. It let out a sound that might have been a laugh. They are not. Okay. Thank you. I ran down the hall, scraping against the far wall as I drew nearer to the corner where the creature waited and watched. I was terrified it would grab me as I turned into the living room, but it didn't move at all until I was past. Then I heard the floor creak with its weight as it moved behind me down the hall, and my parents began screaming louder than ever. As I opened the front door, their screams were suddenly gone. You may not remember, but I saw you that first night. I acted surprised when they called me as next of kin, and I went back down to Emerson Park, where you were sitting in the back of an ambulance, gauze stuffed into your mouth like a chipmunk, and tears streaming down your cheeks. You looked so small and pitiful, and I surprised myself by promising you that I'd take care of you, and I really have tried my best. I hope I've done enough to prepare you for this, to see you through the horror I helped cause. I think so, not because I trust myself, but because I trust you. You are stronger and smarter than them. You can beat this, and when you do, leave as much of this as you can behind. This world is vast and terrifying beyond what most people realize, but it is more wonderful too. Be brave, find your joys and purpose, and remember that while we all have to save ourselves, it helps to have others that make us feel worth saving. Story number 2. When I found a post tucked away in the dark corners of the internet, my interest was piqued. It was titled, Killers Anonymous. At first I thought it was a joke made to scare or morbidly amuse people, but I was wrong. It was a support group created for people like me. When I was about 18, I began to loathe life, and I couldn't stand seeing my peers enjoying theirs. I would spend hours alone, but it grew into days of no contact. The drugs and alcohol I had been using started flooding my mind with unsavory things. I started fantasizing about death, and I imagined becoming the one who dishes it out. I would relish in thinning about the high I could achieve through such an act. A high that no drug could provide me. A high that I would never come down from. I knew it was wrong to think that way, but I couldn't help but take pleasure from it. After thoroughly reading the post, I was hesitant to apply. What if this were some new way for law enforcement to collect information on potentially dangerous people? I thought. I applied regardless, and after about a week, I finally received the confirmation email. The email contained almost all of the same information as the post. I scrolled down to the bottom, which contained their meeting schedule. Next Friday? I said. After I had passed the idea around in my head for several days, I decided to go. I was still nervous, but also excited. I was finally going to get the chance to speak about these urges, and not have someone shame me for them. At least I hoped I wouldn't be. I had never told anyone about them before, but could you blame me? This isn't exactly a problem everyone struggles with. Friday came quickly, and as I stood outside the house I was told to meet at, anxiety began to build. Once again, what if all this was a setup? I thought. I swallowed my fears and made my way to the front door. I gave a few firm knocks, and a woman opened and greeted me. She was a cute brunette, and she looked to be in her late 20s. "Oh, hello. Are you here for the group?" she said with a cheerfulness about her. Yes, I am," I said as I reached out to shake her hand. "Good to meet you," she said, while returning my gesture. "Please come in and make yourself at home. We will be starting soon, but first, which group are you in?" I paused and was confused by her question. "I thought it was just the one group," I asked. "Oh no, there are actually 4 groups," she said. "One group wouldn't be big enough. You would be surprised by how many people we get. Group 4 has fewer people if you would like to start with a smaller group." "I'll be in Group 4 then," I said, before walking inside. Greeting me were 2 large living rooms to the right and left. Each room had chairs placed in a circular pattern. There was also a staircase leading into what looked like another large space. "Your group is in the left room," the woman explained. "You made the right choice coming here, and I hope we can help." "Thank you," I said before taking my seat. After about 30 minutes of waiting, both of the bottom rooms now looked full of people. An older man in our circle, probably about 60, stood from his chair and introduced himself. "Hello, everyone. My name is Troy, redacted, and I'll be mediating tonight. I would like to start by saying how proud I am that you're all here tonight. I know all of you are probably nervous and hesitant, but I want you all to know you're safe here. Now I see that we have some new faces here tonight. Would anyone like to introduce themselves?" After a few seconds of silence, another man in the group broke the tension. "I would," he said. "My name is Mike." "Nice to meet you, Mike," Troy responded. Would you like to tell the group a bit about yourself and maybe why you're here? Sure, Mike said with an unsure tone. I was just a young boy when it started. It was small with just some thoughts, images, and fantasies. But after a few years, I started to experiment with dissecting animals. Mostly small ones like birds, rodents, and the occasional cat. Taking away the lives of animals brought a sense of comfort. I would strangle, stab, drown, electrocute, and then dismember them to finish. I felt in complete control, and my mind would become free and clear again. But the older I got, and the harder life got, I needed to do it more and more often. Recently, it hasn't been helping at all. Mike went silent before Troy responded, "That was very brave of you, son. Not a lot of people can open up about their thoughts and actions like that." Mike's story fascinated me. I too had considered killing animals for pleasure, but I didn't think it would provide enough satisfaction to satiate me. Besides, I actually liked and respected animals. It was people I had a vendetta against. Troy turned his gaze towards me. "How about you, son? Would you feel comfortable introducing yourself to the group?" I nodded in agreement and told them about my disgust for people, about how I hated my own life, and explained my feelings towards how others enjoyed theirs. After I was done, I scanned the room. Everyone looked visibly uncomfortable with what I was saying. I took a deep breath before finishing. But now I'm here, and looking for help. Troy stood again. "Thank you, Eli," he said before giving me the same comforting message that he gave Mike. After Troy sat back down, another woman raised her hand before saying she wanted to go next. She told the group about how she hated her parents and wanted to kill them. After she explained herself, she broke down in tears. Troy began to comfort her before calling the meeting to a close. After the group stood and exchanged pleasantries, I made my way over to Mike, who was standing on the porch. "Hey, it's Mike, right?" I said while tapping him on the shoulder. "Yeah, what's up?" he asked. "I don't have a whole lot of people who I can talk to about these sort of things, so I was wondering if you would like to get some lunch," I asked. Sure, why not?" he said with a sign of hesitation. "Great. How does Jen's Diner sound?" "Sounds good," he said before giving a slight smile. After a few-mile drive, I pulled into the diner parking lot. Mike pulled in right after. We walked inside and were approached by an attractive young waitress. "How many?" she asked. "2, I answered. "And can we get a booth?" "Sure can. Right this way." She guided us to our booth before asking, "So what can I start you two off with to drink?" "I'll take a water," said Mike. "Sure thing. And you, sir?" I looked deep into her eyes. She looked so sweet and innocent. "I'll have the same," I said with a smile. "Okay. I'll have those waters out to y'all shortly," she said before walking off. "So, Eli, what made you want to join the... well, you know, the group?" Mike asked, while seeming a bit fidgety. "I guess I finally felt like it was time to get some help. Though, I don't remember you ever saying what you wanted out of the group," I asked. "Well, I guess you could say I want help, but I also kinda don't," Mike said, while looking down and avoiding eye contact. "Same," I said with a chuckle. "I want help, but I still really want to try it at least once." His eyes looked up, with a glimpse of curiosity in his eyes. "You know I was..." Mike said before being cut off. "Here are those waters," said the waitress. "Are you all ready, or do you need a few more minutes?" I looked at Mike and gestured to confirm before responding, "Yeah, we're ready. I'll take the clubhouse sandwich and chips." "All righty. And what will you have?" she said, while looking at Mike. "I'll have the working man's burger with fries, and no mayo, please," Mike said, while looking more comfortable and open. "Sure thing. I'll be back with y'all's orders as soon as it's ready," she said before once again heading back to the kitchen. "Back to what I was saying," Mike said after taking a sip of water. "I had an idea. What if just once we follow through with our urges? You know, just to see if we truly have it in us or not." I felt it was a great idea before saying, "I don't know, are you sure that's something you want to do?" "Yes," he said with confidence. "I've been sure for a long time." When he said that, I could hear the seriousness in his tone. I reached out my hand to meet his. It felt like two partners agreeing on a business deal. After a few minutes went by, the waitress returned with our food. "Here you are. 1 clubhouse sandwich with chips, and 1 working man's burger with fries with no mayo. Enjoy." We both thanked her before returning to our conversation. "So, do you have anyone in mind?" I said. I saw him peer over my shoulder to the kitchen window. He looked like a hungry predator who had just caught sight of a plump hog. "How about her?" he said. "I think she would work." I turned to look back while having a good idea who he was referring to. It was at our gorgeous waitress. "Don't you think she would be a bit risky? Especially since she looks young and is probably known by a lot of customers. Wouldn't people notice if she went missing?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "But there isn't anyone going to suspect us. We're nobodies to her with no connections." "Okay, we'll do it," I said, hoping he was right. A few more minutes went by, and we finished our meals. The waitress came and gave us our bills. "Here you both are. Will you be needing anything else?" she asked. "No," Mike responded. "I think we're good." As the waitress walked back to the kitchen, Mike was eyeballing her up and down. We made our way back to our vehicles. "Meet me here tomorrow, and we can start planning," Mike said. "Got it," I agreed before shaking his hand once more. I sat in my car while I watched Mike drive off in his truck. Soon after, I headed back home. I lived in a little apartment located in a more run-down part of town. It was all I could barely afford while working as a bookkeeper for a small local shop. Later that night, while lying in bed and staring up at the ceiling, the feeling of losing control, which I was all too familiar with, had returned to me. I thought long and hard, trying to cling to the idea Mike and I had. I was hoping to be comforted by it, and it soon proved I was right. The next day, I met up with Mike at the diner at around 7 o'clock in the evening, just as we had planned. We had parked in the abandoned parking garage across the street to help get a better view. I got out of my car to hop into Mike's older pickup truck. "There she is," Mike said while looking through a pair of binoculars. "Hello, gorgeous." "So what's the plan here, Mike?" I asked him. "I think we should just follow her home to start. See if she lives with other people or not," he responded. After about 2 hours went by, the diner looked to be closing for the night. We sat a while longer and waited for the waitress to come out. About 30 minutes later, we saw her getting into her car. Mike started the engine, and we made our way to the garage exit. We followed her for what felt like 30 minutes out of town. She led us out into the country, which wasn't a shock since we lived in a small rural town in Georgia. She pulled off onto a dirt road. We followed a bit longer before she pulled into what looked like a driveway. We crept up in front of her home with our headlights off. Mike pulled out his binoculars again. "Should we just do it now?" I asked. "No," he answered sternly. "We don't even know if she lives alone or not yet. Besides, I want to take her back to my place. I live in a nice, quiet, and deserted place like this." "Your place?" I asked him. "Yeah, my place. If I'm gonna do this, I want to do it right," he said, sounding like a tradesman talking about his craft. "Okay," I said, not wanting to upset him. He didn't respond, and instead just kept watching her. She pulled out her keys, unlocked the front door, and went inside. She turned on the porch light. Maybe she is giving us the go-ahead to come on in," Mike said, while chuckling. I laughed with him before he pressed on the gas pedal. After we hit paved road again, he asked me, "You want to come over to my place? I'll show you what I got prepped." Curious, I answered. "Sure, why not?" "Great," he said, sounding excited. "I think you'll love it, and I think it'll help give you more confidence in our plan." He drove us back to his place, and he was right. It was in the middle of nowhere, a small mobile home on a piece of land that had a big barn in the back. We got out and walked around back to the barn. "This is it," he said, sounding proud. "This is where we're going to do it." It looked old while littered with cobwebs and hay. The left wall, when walking through the entrance, was covered in saws, hatchets, machetes, rakes, and even had a cleaver. It looked like a scene pulled right out of a slasher film. The right wall had metal rings with what looked like chains and cuffs looped through them. They were lined up in a row leading all the way to the back, and it looked like a dungeon. Lastly, in the center was a large rectangular concrete slab, which looked to be about 4 feet high, 7 feet in length, and another 4 feet in width. It, too, had metal loops drilled into it, and I could see leather straps lying on top. "Wow, this is pretty impressive, Mike. Are you sure you haven't done this before?" I asked, while laughing. "No," he said, while grinning and laughing, "but I've been planning and thinking about it for years. I just haven't had the gumption to finally commit to it. But now, thanks to you, I do." "Well, after getting a good look at this place, I think everything is going to go great," I said. "Hey, do you want to come in for a beer?" he asked. "Sure, why not?" I said after checking my watch. "It's only midnight. I'll have one before we head back to my car." We stepped back out through the large barn doors, and Mike locked them back before making our way to his mobile home. We walked inside with Mike leading the way, and I could hear Mike fumbling around while trying to find the light switch. Finally, the lights came on, and Mike went to the kitchen to fetch us a couple of beers. "So do you live alone here, or do your folks live here too?" I asked. "I got this place all to myself. My parents passed a few years back, and since I'm an only child, it all got left to me," he said before handing me a beer. "What happened to them?" I asked, hoping not to upset him. "Died right in there," Mike said while pointing to what looked like a master bedroom. "I woke one day and found them still in bed, cold to the touch and not moving. You know, I buried them out back. Mama always hated the idea of being buried in a place full of strangers, so figured home would be more comfortable for her." "And what about your dad? Is he buried here too?" I asked, very curious to know more. "Technically," Mike said before letting out a loud laugh, "as long as you consider being turned into pig shit being buried. Even that is probably too good for him." Not wanting to push the subject further, I kept silent and nodded. We continued talking for a bit longer while we finished our beers. As I stood up from his couch ready to head back, I started feeling nauseous and could barely hold my footing. "Can't handle one beer," he said before I finally stumbled to the floor. "Ice water," I said, while trying to hold back vomit. Mike nodded before bringing me a glass. I poured some on my face, but it didn't help. I was in and out of consciousness for many hours, but I do remember feeling rocks and sticks rubbing against my back like I was being dragged. Next, I could hear chains rattling, and soon after, metal cuffs clamped shut around my wrists. I felt the metal dig tightly into my skin. After that, I didn't come to until a stinging beam of sunlight pierced my eyelids from a hole in the barn wall. I looked around, still feeling the lingering effects from whatever was in my drink. It was hot and humid, and my clothes were drenched in sweat. My hands were numb from being in the cuffs for so long. Mike was nowhere in sight, and I couldn't hear much of anything outside. I tried wiggling the chains loose, but I had no luck. As the day went by, and the lingering effects went away, so did the sunlight. The sun was setting, and the barn was soon plunged into darkness. Headlights shot through cracks in the walls and lit up the barn. Soon after, I heard the sound of crunching pine straw coming towards the barn. The sound of the barn doors opening sent chills up my spine. I started hyperventilating, and my stomach turned from the thought of what he was going to do to me. "Breathe, Eli," said Mike, after turning on the bright overhead lights. "I haven't even started yet." "Why are you doing this? I thought we were a team," I said, after catching my breath. "No, Eli, we weren't a team. I do like you, though, so I'm sorry I have to do this. If I had the strength to not give in to my temptations, I would," he said, in a dead monotone voice that I had yet heard from him. "What are you going to do to me?" I asked, while trying to control my breath. "Eli, I'm going to be honest with you. It's not going to be good for you. I have temptations and compulsions that go beyond just killing," he said before filling a syringe. My stomach and chest burned with fear, and I feel my body wanting to convulse. He walked over to me before sticking me in the arm with the needle. I was begging him to stop, but he just told me to hush. It didn't take long for the effects to take hold, and I was out like a light again. After I returned to what I assumed was going to be a brief time back in the land of the living, I found myself lying on the concrete slab. My legs, arms, torso, and neck had leather straps tethering me to it. After many hours of being restricted from using the restroom, I could smell my soiled clothes. I felt like an animal locked in a pen and ready for the slaughter. As I laid there, marinating in my own waste, I could hear whistling approaching the barn. Once again, the loud noise from the barn doors opening filled the air. "Good Lord, man, it smells like fucking piss and shit in here," he said while chuckling. "Perhaps I should have put you in some diapers." I didn't say anything in response. I didn't have anything left to say to Mike that wasn't already said. He then grabbed the cleaver that was hanging on the wall before walking over to me. He rubbed my legs down with what smelled like alcohol. After he had wiped down my legs, he grabbed my left leg to hold it still, and then raised his right arm, holding the cleaver. He looked like a butcher ready to get to work. His arm swung down in full force, and I heard the bones in my leg crunch. A sharp pain rang loud through my leg. With every swing, I hear crunch after crunch. I could hear my flesh tearing and my blood gushing out. I started to black out from the pain. "No, no, no," Mike yelled, after splashing ice-cold water in my face. "We're not done yet." I looked down at my body, and I could see my leg. It was sitting in a gray bucket that had been set between my legs. I threw up from the gruesome sight. Mike wiped my blood from his hands and face with a cloth before grabbing my right leg. "Almost done, Eli," he said before hacking away again. I saw my blood splash across his face once more. The pain was too severe for me to stay conscious. The next thing I remember was ice-cold water soaking my face, and once again bringing me back. "All done for now," he said while patting my face. "You sewed up real nice, Eli." I looked back down to see that the bucket was gone, but so were both of my legs. I had stitches all over the nubs where my legs once were. Everything from just below my knees was gone. "Come on, let's get you chained back up," Mike said while undoing the arm straps. "No needles this time?" I asked him sarcastically. "Planning on running away?" he asked, while returning the same sarcastic tone before letting out a sickening laugh. He then picked me up and tossed me over his shoulder. As he was walking me back over to the chains, I saw that he had an old pocket knife tucked in his back pocket. I reached for it, and luckily my arms were just long enough. I managed to grab it and drive it into the back of Mike's neck. I fell and hit the ground hard after Mike dropped me. He stumbled for a second before finally hitting the ground as well. His clothes were soaked in blood, and I couldn't tell how much was mine or his. Mike leaned up against the concrete slab before showing me his eyes, which were now filled with rage. "Fuck you," he yelled in between spitting up blood. Eventually, his words became nothing more than bloody gurgling, and then his body went limp. I crawled to the barn doors and was barely able to get one of them open. I managed to make it to the mobile home before finding my cell phone in his nightstand. I called the police and told them the address, which I found off a piece of mail sitting on the coffee table. I sat on the floor in his room until the police finally busted down the front door. 2 officers rushed in and lifted me up before carrying me outside. 2 paramedics met them, and they took care of me from there. The whole ride in the back of the ambulance, all I could think about was what would happen if Mike had some evidence of what we were planning together. After they got me to the hospital, they cleaned my wounds and redid the stitches. A few hours went by, and an officer walked into my room. "How are you doing, son?" the officer asked. "I could be better," I said before letting out a groan from the pain. "I'm sorry for asking. Anyway, I'm Detective Harrington," he responded, "and I wanted to ask you about the man who did this while your memory is still fresh." I was reluctant, but I knew he was probably right. "Sure. What do you need to know?" "Do you remember what happened when he abducted you?" "It was while I was walking out to my car a few days ago." I lied, hoping he would buy it. "And do you remember where this happened?" he asked. "No." I lied again. "I don't remember much of what happened before waking up in the barn. He stuck me in the neck with something and I was out." Okay. And did the perpetrator ever mention anything about his parents? Or maybe a woman by the name of Emily, redacted?" Detective Harrington asked. "He told me they died a few years back, but not much else, and I don't know an Emily, redacted." "Who is she?" I asked. He scratched his beard and finished writing in his notes before saying, "We think she was who he was targeting next. She's just some waitress at a local diner, but you don't need to worry about those details." "You sure?" "I'm positive, son. You just get some rest. Well, we can continue after you get a little better," he said before stepping back out. After a few days in the hospital, the doctors saw me fit to go home, and I was wheeled out to my father's car. He thanked the nurse for wheeling me out before he loaded me into his car. On the way home, he tried talking to me and asked me questions about what had happened, but I didn't answer. I stared out the window, not saying a word. After he figured out I wasn't up for talking, we finished the ride in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, he helped me inside and laid me down in the guest bedroom. While lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, not blinking or uttering a word. I could feel pain in my legs that weren't there. I hated the bastard for what he did to me. I felt betrayed by someone who I thought was becoming my friend, by someone just like me. I guess it's for the best, though. Now nobody has to worry about what I could do anymore. Story number 3. Closure is a funny thing. It's something I've searched for in therapy, drugs, liquor, rehab. I've ridden every merry-go-round and spun every roundabout. I don't think closure is something you can work towards, nor something given with grace. I don't think there's a rhyme or reason. I think some people just get it, and others just don't. I'm a part of the latter. When I was 12, I found my father in pieces, literal pieces. The shotgun blast had blown a crater in his face, spreading his eyes apart and decimating his nose. My mouth was agape, and I could feel the sharp air escaping my throat, yet I couldn't hear myself scream. Everything went silent. as if I was special enough for the world to stop turning, for every noise to shush and mourn. 15 years later, I still haven't found a vice that erases the sight of his face, like a scarlet cave, and the cherry on top, never knowing why. I always heard people say they never saw the signs, and I'd foolishly wonder how. You know when someone's physically hurt, how can't you tell mentally? Yet my father, who golfed with his old college buddies on weekends and had just received a horse-choking Christmas bonus, had felt worthless enough to swallow the barrel of a 12-gauge. But what puzzled me more was how he could leave me without at least telling me why. I wondered if it'd even satisfy me, but at least I'd be able to draw a conclusion. All I was left with were broken pieces that don't fit back together. After nearly graduating with a master's in journalism, I showed up to graduation so drunk, I needed my stomach pumped thereafter. Friends, who soon became strangers, told me I'd pissed myself on stage before puking on a humanitarian charity founder who was receiving an honorary doctorate. My diploma was revoked, and I was barred from ever returning to campus premises, and that only sent me spiraling further into my addictions. With nothing but empty, sticky bottles and unused writing skills, I wasted days drowning in my sorrows, my father's face behind my eyelids with every blink. He was in every dream, every memory, every thought. I'm addicted 'cause Dad killed himself. I lost my degree 'cause Dad killed himself. I have no friends 'cause Dad killed himself. I was stuck in a cycle of self-pity that nobody else around me cared to indulge in. I didn't blame them. Why would they? After flipping burgers at McDonald's for 2 years, I was fired after getting caught buying LSD behind the building while on my break. With no college degree, unused writing skills, and expensive habits, I took to a different kind of freelance writing. Are you seeking closure? Didn't get the truth from a special someone gone too soon? Email me at redacted.com and have the final goodbye you've always needed. If I couldn't help myself, I thought maybe I could help other people while making a quick buck in the process. Business started slow. The inbox receiving mostly spam and trolls, lacing their emails with viruses. But soon enough, real commissions began to come in. My son, Brandon, hung himself in his bedroom closet. He was 17 and the star pitcher on his high school's baseball team. They found pills in his system too, but I guess we didn't have enough. He loved bad action movies that I always sat through anyway, and skateboarding with his cousins. Can you please just tell me it's not my fault? Can he tell me that? Initially it felt invasive. The degree I didn't get wasn't in psychology. I was aiming to be a film journalist. Could I actually help these people? Or was this just another one of my ways of sucking blood? Most of all, was this something that would have helped me? I blew the $50 I received for Brandon's note on liquor. Then I drank it all and cried, smashed the glass, cut my hand cleaning up the shards, and cried harder. It felt impossible to escape the labyrinth of hating myself, yet constantly needing to tell myself I was a good person to stay above water. A few days later, another request appeared in my inbox. She delayed the M train for 4 hours while they scrubbed her off. A whole person, their dreams and mistakes, turned to paste. I fucking hate her, and I miss her so much. Can you just tell me you forgive me for what I said? You don't need to know what it was. She walked out on me for it and delayed the M train for 4 hours, and I think that's punishment enough. Another $50. I bought heroin for the first time and blacked out for 3 days. I'd periodically wake up in the bathroom, my fingertips scraped to ribbons from scratching the grout between the tiles. It was terrifying how euphoric I felt. I'd never been so scared, yet so elated in my life. I wondered if my dad had ever tried the same to cope with whatever he was wrestling with. Ever since his suicide, it was hard to look back at him clearly. I knew my memories with him were real, yet they didn't feel true. Did I ever actually know this person? Or did I know all that I needed to? When my email dinged again, I crawled across the wooden floor before climbing onto my desk chair. With a floppy smack to the keyboard, the screen gleamed to life. I'm a coward. That's all you need to know about me. I'd like to say I tried my best, but I don't think that's true. My entire life up to this moment has felt like a failed test run, a botched product waiting for recall. Every day I walk around wondering if it's my last. Everything in my vision is just something to bash my head against or leap in front of. It feels like there's rust under my skin, and I'm homesick in bed. There's no finite remedy. I don't have anything to say, nothing that'd make it any easier for my family. Sent extra for it to be expedited. Thanks. My eyes bulged at the $150 a commission. When you're an addict, you want money in a way that spans beyond greed. It's starvation, the air that pumps your lungs. When I didn't have it, my chest burned, and when it was within my grasp, I salivated. The only thing better was what it could get you. But as I read over the commission again, my gut churned with unease. I didn't have much info about this person, other than their email, but could I have reported this to the police? Was I about to write a letter that didn't have to be written? My shaking hands hovered over my keyboard as I wondered if I should email him something else, sobbing about how my father's suicide ruined my life, or telling him how much better it gets. I always pondered if my dad did it, 'cause he didn't think it would get any better, or if he couldn't handle it getting any worse before it did. Running on a descending timer, but all you know is its tick. Some days, sinking into the shape I'd accumulated in my mattress, I'd felt like I understood him more than I ever had, but I didn't want to die. I just wanted it to stop, which made me realize I always understood him more than I thought. The pointed finger on my screen sat above the accept button on the PayPal offer as I stared without a blink. I could do a lot with $150. Besides, you couldn't help Dad. What makes you think you could help a stranger? After a dry swallow, I clicked to accept the payment, both my soul and my wallet gaining weight. Once I sent the email, I threw up in the bathroom before choking down 3 vodka shots and puking again. I didn't care what I did to my body, or what it took to make it hurt. Anything felt better than the pain in my head. Initially, it felt like I was spending blood money, but without a doubt, I soon withdrew the cash and blew it all on an assortment of liquor, clear in one hand and then brown in the other. I took swigs from both while I watched brainless TV, dabbing the spilled whiskey off the side of my mouth with the crumpled eviction warning I'd found on my apartment door that morning. Thump, thump. Under the volume of the trashy reality show, I suddenly overheard a banging noise, slow and hardy, probably just construction that'll never get done. Our tax dollars hard at work. I raised the volume and freed 2 fingers to pinch a potato chip from a nearby bag before eviscerating it in my mouth and washing it down with tequila. Thump, thump, thump. The noise quickly returned, louder and more aggressive, its efforts vibrating across the floorboards and through the legs of my bed frame. My head swirling with intoxication, I paused the show, filling the room with silence. For a moment, nothing. Thump, thump. I swiveled toward my closet door, which was practically bouncing off its hinges as something pounded against the inside of it. Blinking like a frog, I rested the bottles on my nightstand and stumbled to my feet before drunkenly lumbering toward the white chipped door. Hunched in front of it, my eyes scanned it up and down. Am I asleep? My body winced from head to toe as it banged right in front of me. Hello? Look, if you're a squatter or something, I don't want any problems, okay? The place won't even be mine soon, anyway. After I finished speaking, silence. Hello? I hesitantly reached for the doorknob. As my trembling fingers neared the cold metal, my eyes widened as it suddenly began turning on its own, screeching as it slowly spun. Before I knew it, the door swung open, its edge smashing against my forehead and knocking me on my ass. I could feel warm blood trickling down my temple as a throbbing sensation clenched my skull. Once my eyes unclenched, they stared, bulged and baffled at the blurry sight of a body hanging from a noose in my closet. The rope creaked as it gently swayed, something gurgling in their crushed throat. With rapid blinks, I attempted to erase what I assumed was a hallucination, but each time my eyes opened again, it was still there, swinging like a wind chime. In the dark, it was hard to fully make out its appearance, but they seemed smaller than the average adult, some kind of logo on his buttoned-up tee. Then, as if tugged with a hook off stage, the body yanked backward and vanished between the rows of clothes. What the actual fuck? As I raised a hand toward the gash on my forehead, something coarse began slithering around my throat. Before I could look down, it cinched my neck, squeezing a wheezy choke out of me. My hands pawed at what felt like rope, which tightened farther while slowly lifting me off the ground. I desperately attempted to rip it off, but its grip was too tight to slip a finger through, frantically kicking my feet that would soon be off the ground. I noticed the liquor bottles in the corner of my eye. Then I raised my leg and used my foot to pull one of them over the edge before shattering it into jagged chunks. Nearly spraining a muscle, I stretched to grab a piece of glass, just barely snatching one before clutching it, till my palm bled as I sawed at the rope. Blood pooled in my aching head as my lungs sizzled with desperation, the dense rope hanging by a thread. As my toes severed from the ground, so did the rope, a hissing breath sucking into my expanding throat as I dropped to the floor. I released the shard of glass before gently probing my neck, my eyes darting around for the rope and whoever was holding it, but neither were anywhere to be seen. Hunched over my bathroom sink, I bandaged my forehead and scrubbed off the blood I'd smeared on my throat, revealing the dark purple ring the noose had left. Staring at the bruise, I swallowed roughly and winced. That was real. I know it was. I'm not fucking crazy. Wounds aside, my eyes were bloodshot with their own purple halos underneath. They looked like two snuffed-out candles in my sockets. I tried to remember if Dad looked like that toward the end, but in my mind, it was hard to see his face intact. And once I pictured it, it wasn't easy to stop. Stumbling out of the bathroom, I grabbed my phone and texted my plug, who said he was with a chillin' friend and I'd need to come his way if I wanted to cop. I had never found myself in stranger places than when I became desperate for money. My not-so-proudest moment was when I was high out of my mind in Vegas, twirling in circles on the Strip when I witnessed a woman cry with distress after the engagement ring she'd received minutes prior had tumbled directly through the splits of a sewer grate. After helping the naive, fresh-faced couple retrieve the ring, I abruptly ran off with it in my clutches, the woman's fiancé chasing me for a few feet before she yelled for him to just let it go. For some reason, that time in particular looped in my mind as I waited on the subway platform, my arms crossed tightly against my chest as I stood under a singular flickering yellow light. Metal screeches echoed and leaky pipes ached. A man sat across the platform, slumped and masked by a brown raincoat. I couldn't tell if he was asleep or if his chest was even lifting. My stomach churned with unease as it felt like a blowtorch was raised against my nerve endings. I was sobering up and desperate for otherwise. An incoming train soon roared across the opposite tracks, and through the passing windows, the man was standing and staring back. I struggled to see what was under his hood, a sliver of his face appearing as a deep red blur, chunks dripping from it onto his chest. When the train entered the tunnel, he was slouched again, as if he hadn't budged at all. I clenched my eyes and rubbed them before touching my sore neck, using the pain to ground myself in reality. Jesus. Maybe I am losing it. Near silence filled the subway again. No other pedestrians joining other than I and the man in the raincoat. My chest tightening with anxiety, I opened my phone and searched for the scheduled train times online. Suddenly, through my peripheral, I spotted movement. I looked away from my screen and noticed the man was now sitting upward, hunched over the edge of the bench. You're on public transportation. He's just some guy. Mind your business. Returning my attention to my phone, I searched for my train line before catching another movement. My paranoia getting the best of me. I glanced at the man, who now had his arms extended outward, his wrists bent to face his palms toward me. My brows furrowed with confusion as I chuckled weakly to myself. God, this stop always attracts the weirdest of weirdos. Then, the man craned his hands back and viciously pushed against the air before I suddenly felt the pressure of a pair of hands against my back. The unexpected force shoved me onto the tracks, my phone shattering to a black mirror as it smashed beside me. Aches blooming across my rib cage, I writhed against the gravel, squealing with each throb. Rolling onto my back, my vision faded in and out, the scarlet-faced man in the leather raincoat appearing and disappearing each time. Help! I instinctively shouted, but there was no one around to do so. Then, every pebble beneath me began to shake and hop, like Mexican jumping beans before the headlights of the oncoming train illuminated the tunnel. Attempting to lift myself while avoiding electrocution, the train's barreling wheels screeched against the metal tracks. After reaching the foot of the platform, I hopped and just barely caught its edge, my torso throbbing. Somebody, please, as the blinding headlights entered the corner of my vision. I desperately attempted to lift myself onto the platform, my fingertips turning white from pressure. The tip of a black boot appeared before digging its heel onto my hand. I yelped as my grip involuntarily released, sending me into a free fall onto the tracks. The train mere feet from me, it was as if time had slowed, the inches to the ground feeling like miles. At the foot of the platform stood the man, the tips of his shoes dangling over the edge. Then the yellow lights swallowed my vision and the metal grating stuffed my ears. Please, I don't want to die. Please. I clenched my eyes shut as my limbs flailed, my ankle knocking into something and prompting another bang throughout the floor. After a few seconds, all that was left were my own shaking breaths rattling in my ears. What the fuck is happening? Trembling in a ball, I cautiously opened my eyes. I was on my bedroom floor, my surroundings wrecked from my panic. Rapidly blinking in disbelief, my eyes darted around the moonlit room, crickets singing through my cracked window. My desk was shifted from impact, my laptop resting sideways on the floor, with a new commission flashing in my inbox. In the clutches of my hand was my phone. My plugs contact open, with an unsent text half-typed in the bar. Is this my room? Like, my actual room? I scattered to my feet, my heart thumping in my ears like a machine gun. What the fuck are you? I shouted aloud. Silence, of course. I plopped onto the edge of my bed and dropped my head into my hands. Jesus Christ, I'm losing my mind. For the rest of the night, I remained curled under my blanket, but unable to sleep, till the sun crept through my window. My eyeballs were bloodshot and burning from the lack of moisture. My blinking reduced as I feared what I'd see once I opened my eyes again. As the birds chirped through the window, I cautiously sat up in bed, surveying the mess I'd made of my room. When I planted my feet on the ground, they dipped right into the sticky residue of the liquor I'd spilled last night. This is a problem for another time. My chest still aching, I waddled to the bathroom and lifted my shirt in front of the mirror. My ribs were splotched with brown and purple, my throat still bruised as well. This is real, right? This pain is real. I feel it, yet it's still so hard to believe. With folded lips, I squeezed the ring on my throat, wincing as the pain throbbed throughout my neck till I could no more. Am I convinced enough? I increased pressure till I started to cry before dropping to the cold tile. Just keeping myself on 2 feet was draining. I felt surrounded by phantoms, but that didn't deter me from my work. Once I remembered money wasn't funneling in from anywhere else, and it was going to be hard to find a place to hire me after my last stunt. Holed up in my apartment, I began promoting myself further, like making social media accounts and offering a mailing list. Practically glued to my computer, the same clothes I'd been wearing clung to my sweaty skin, as I was too scared to re-enter my closet. The bruises on my neck and chest weren't just persisting, but appearing to be getting worse, spreading like a purple fungus. For nearly a week, my hands traveled between 2 places, my keyboard and the neck of a bottle. I was cranking out commissions, collecting cash, and hoping to accumulate enough for rent and a liquor cabinet refill. And although the site was initially intended for suicide notes, I started receiving all kinds of requests with financial offers I couldn't afford to turn down. You know, when you're driving and you take just 1 second to look at the radio and you nearly rear-end someone. It's the same with kids. I was right on the porch. He was 10 feet away on the lawn. I took my eyes off him to swat away a bee. By the time I heard the tires burn, the chalky van with the scuffed license plate was gone, and so was he. All because I couldn't stand a bee. Hindsight only offers the stupidest things. It's insulting. It's been 3 years now, and I know he's not coming home. I stopped dreaming of that. Just tell me that he's safe, please. That wherever he is peaceful. Anything, if it can't be with me. For $300, I told a grieving, directionless mother that her missing son was in Candyland. I felt like a scam artist. I was a scam artist. This wasn't real closure, but if it's close enough to the real thing, how bad could that hurt? Plastic's just as shiny as porcelain, no? I made more justifications than I did drinks, but I was raking in more money than I ever had at the time. 5 to 10 commissions a day would flood in. Mothers and fathers, friends and lovers, all begging me to provide them what nothing else has brought. It felt horrible to admit, but there was a strange power to it. After what happened in my closet and at the train station, I was petrified, yet oddly validated. It felt like my work was connecting with something deeper than I could have imagined, and something closer to reality than I could have fathomed. While in the middle of writing for a client, I heard a soft knock on my front door. Rubbing my dry eyes, I dragged my socks against the floorboards as I approached the door. Before making my presence known, I leaned into the peephole. Initially, it appeared that nobody was there, but when I looked down, I noticed a young, raven-haired boy standing with his back turned. His hand was lifted to his mouth, crunches echoing down the hall as he gnawed on something. Is this some kind of prank? Hi, can I help you? I asked through the door. He stiffly retracted his hand from his mouth. I got lost. Is this the right street? His voice was frail, almost monotonous. "Where are you trying to go, bud?" He paused before raising his hand to his mouth again and taking another chomp of his secret snack. "Home," he responded with a mouthful. "Okay, where's home? Do you live in this building?" My fingertips inched toward the chain lock. Another pause while he dug in for more. As he pulled something with his teeth, I heard a subtle splash against the ground. I got lost. Is this the right street? This isn't right. I stopped reaching for the lock, balling my fist as I feared stepping away from the door. "Look, I'm sorry, kid, but I don't think I can help you. There's a security office in the lobby." His chewing paused as the words left my mouth, a knot forming in my throat. I watched as the boy slowly turned around to reveal his lazy stare and red-stained lips. My bulging eye practically pressed against the glass. My gut churned as he lifted his mangled hand toward his open mouth, which was lined with a row of shattered teeth. With his bloody nubs in his mouth, he used his molars to gnaw at the tender flesh and dense bone, teeth breaking in his mouth and swirling into the mix before he gulped it all down. Then he began to tremble from head to toe, as if an earthquake was erupting inside of him. With twitches and snaps, the boy's torso extended itself upward till his height matched the peephole, his milky eye peering back at me. "Are you my mama?" With a frightened gasp, I jumped backward, my lungs tightening and requiring rapid breaths. "Please, go away," I shouted. Then the boy started to cry. He released this ugly, drunken cry that sounded like a record scratch. It reminded me too much of myself. My palms clamping my ears, his cries were impossible to ignore. It felt like they were ringing in my head. "I can't do this anymore. This isn't worth it. Mama, mama!" He wailed with a gurgle. With squinted eyes and plugged ears, I ran to my bedroom before finding my laptop, snatching it off my desk and smashing it against the floor. "Make it stop!" I shrieked as I stomped the computer to pieces, my chest burning with exhaustion. I soon realized the boy's cries had stopped. My eyes darting around the room, I waited to confirm that whatever was happening had stopped. I didn't even know if I had the power to do so. I just knew I couldn't offer my services anymore. The silence both reassuring and worrying. I hesitantly checked the peephole, and with a sigh of relief, the boy was gone. 2 weeks passed. I'd emptied my apartment of bottles and endured the withdrawals before luckily landing a job at a receptionist's desk, which I got after painting my worsening bruises with foundation for the interview. Everything that happened had scared me straight, but not straight enough, as it was hard not to wonder what exactly I had accomplished with those notes. Did I bridge a gap to the afterlife? Was their family seeing things too? The same things as me? Pertaining to the latter, I sure hoped not. But nonetheless, I'd discovered power in speaking for those who didn't have last words, and whether or not I was playing God or connecting with one, there was one thing I couldn't shake off my mind. Could I use it to talk to Dad? One night, after work, I grabbed a piece of loose leaf and pencil before sitting at my kitchen table, staring at it as if words would appear on their own. Writing about other people came with ease, but this had me paralyzed. I didn't know if I should write what I wanted to hear, or what I think he would have said. I struggled to even differentiate the two. Ultimately, I forced the pencil to the paper and trusted it to flow. My golden hour, my Sophia. I wanted to give you all the best parts of me and swallow the worst, but I know you would have loved it all the same. I wish I was strong enough to let you do so. Conquer the world, kiddo. You've never needed me to do it. as my teardrop stained the page. Rain suddenly began pelting against my window. My head perked up as I dropped the pencil, swiveling around in search of any sight of him. "Dad," I hesitantly called aloud, feeling silly once I did it. Silence. Then I yelped as something bolted through the window, sprinkling shattered glass across the floorboards. Rain leaking through the cracked hole, I inched toward the projectile that rested amongst the shards. A golf ball? My eyes widened. "Dad." I rushed to the window, and standing in the wet, desolate street was the red-faced man in the brown coat. Of course, he was always the one ghost I couldn't escape. Sprinting downstairs, I threw the exit doors open, the storm immediately soaking me as I searched for him through the droplets. "Dad! Dad!" Thunder roared, and lightning thrashed in the dark sky as I searched desperately to no avail. In the corners of my eyes, I'd catch a glimpse of his bullet-chewed face, but he'd vanish at the heel turn. Spinning till I was dizzy and nauseous, I collapsed to my knees in the flooded street, my tears mixing into the rain. "Dad, I'm here. I'm right here." Clawing at the pavement till my nails ripped, it felt like every memory, every picture of him was burning to ash in my head. Even when he was on the basement sofa, the barrel of the shotgun crammed into the crimson flesh flower that had bloomed. "I can't see you, Dad. Please, I can't see you." Story number 4. I saw her first when I was 9. I wish I never had. It was the school bathroom, the one no one used. The lights always flickered, and the mirrors never showed your face quite right. The air hung thick, like it hadn't been breathed in years. Then the scraping started, metal against metal, slow, deliberate, one stall door at a time. I held my breath as it drew closer, my heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. It stopped at my stall. I looked down, small bare feet, crusted in blood, toes twitching. I opened the door. She looked like me, or what I might look like if I'd been buried alive. Her skin was corpse gray, lips split and peeling, streaks of black grime across her jaw and collarbone. Her hair hung in matted ropes, soaked with filth. Her nightgown was soaked through with rot. But her eyes, if they could be called eyes, were voids. They swallowed light. They swallowed everything. Her mouth opened, unhinged, wider, too wide, as if something was trying to come out. I woke up soaked in sweat and urine. My voice was gone from screaming. My mother said it was a nightmare, but she never left. She followed me. She changed the way she appeared. Sometimes behind me in mirrors, her hand pressed flat to the glass. Sometimes crawling across the ceiling. Sometimes crouched on all fours in the corner of the room, twitching like a broken insect. When I turned 13, the paralysis began. I'd wake up and not be able to move. I'd feel her weight on me, not just pressure, digging, like she was trying to climb inside me. Her mouth would be inches from mine, and from her black eye sockets, I would hear screams, not human. A chorus of children crying, something gurgling blood, a woman laughing while drowning. Her breath smelled like decay, like something long dead and never buried. Then she'd speak, always the same words, my voice but wrong, warped. "Follow me." Oh, I never did. So she started to punish me. She'd slam me into nightmares that felt more real than waking life. I'd wake with bruises, claw marks. Once, a bite on my thigh so deep I bled. I told people I fell, cut myself in my sleep. No one believed me. They thought I wanted attention. I stopped telling anyone, but she didn't stop. She started laughing, whispering my name over and over. Sometimes she'd let me think I woke up, but I hadn't. I was still dreaming, still trapped. Her face would slowly emerge from the ceiling. her arms stretching down from corners that shouldn't exist. She'd crawl on top of me, her bones snapping audibly with each movement, her nails dragging across my skin, slow and deliberate. Sometimes she pressed her face so close that I could feel her cracked teeth against my lips. I never kissed her back. She hated that. My relationships collapsed. One boyfriend woke up and swore he saw her kneeling on the headboard, looking down at him. He left the next morning and never returned my calls. I sought help everywhere. Sleep studies, therapists, priests, psychics, witch doctors, rituals. Nothing worked. She stayed, always just behind the reflection, always just outside the door, until I met my husband. She retreated, maybe out of jealousy, maybe out of patience. For years, she was silent, but now, she's back. I see her in the dark corners of our home, in the fog on the bathroom mirror, in the sliver of reflection from my phone screen. She doesn't speak anymore. She smiles, because I think she knows. I'm getting tired, so tired. The meds don't work. My body can't fight the paralysis forever. My mind is starting to crack. Sometimes I wake up with dirt under my nails and leaves in my mouth. Last night, she touched my face, and it didn't feel like a dream. She wants me to follow, and I think next time I will. Story number 5. Trigger warning, disturbing exam scenario, violence, implied gore, not graphic. The entrance exam was held at a foreign academy, one I'd never visited before, and of course, I was late. No people, no directions, just long echoing corridors and my footsteps bouncing off the silence. I wandered until I found my assigned room. Wasn't hard to find, but the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. It was a big hall, easily fit for 80, maybe 100 students, but there was no one. Just one man by his desk, a teacher. He glanced up from the papers in his hand. "Late," he muttered. "Take a seat." I blinked. "Wait, the exam's over?" He turned toward me. "No." I hesitated. Then, "Where is every—" I said, "Sit." A shiver crawled down my spine as I obeyed. The classroom looked normal, but a strange chill clung to the air. Thick, wrong, heavy like fog you couldn't see. I slid into the second bench, middle row. He walked over and handed me the exam papers. I looked down and froze. My name was printed at the top. My student ID, my department, everything already filled out. "Wait, why is my information already here?" "Because this test is for you," he said. "I filled in your data from the registration form." My skin prickled. Why, just for me? Was all of this even allowed? I skimmed the questions and felt my stomach twist. Biology? "Sir, I'm in commerce. I don't take biology." "Do I look like I care?" he snapped. "You have 10 minutes. A wave of unease rose in my chest. "Sir, this is absurd. No talking." He clicked a stopwatch. "Your time starts now." I stared at him, stunned. He walked to the door and locked it. Click. I didn't really have a choice, so I looked down at the papers. "Answer all the following questions to pass. If you leave before time ends, you fail. Use time wisely." My throat dried. I didn't know how to react. But question 1 was simple enough. 1. What are the vital organs which, if removed, will result in immediate death? Weirdly phrased for an entrance exam, but not impossible. I wrote the obvious: brain, heart, lungs, etc. I moved to the next. 2. Describe what happens to a human body after prolonged exposure to radiation. That wasn't standard. That was disturbing. Even just reading it made my skin crawl. Still, I answered what I remembered: hair loss, vomiting, tissue damage, cancer, death. Then I flipped the page. 3. Describe a painful method you would use to kill someone. I nearly dropped the paper. That wasn't a curveball. That was a confession request. My pen hovered. My brain screamed no, but curiosity whispered, "What kind of test is this?" "Sir," I called out. He raised his head from whatever he was scribbling at the desk. "Is this a prank? Does it look like one?" His voice turned icy. He stood, walked toward me. "Your time is running. Hurry up and finish." Then he walked past me. Casual. Like this was just a regular day. I sat there, stunned. My pen hesitated, then wrote one word. Fire. I turned the page and nearly screamed. The question came with a photo. A high-resolution image of a woman's head, split cleanly in half. Skull open. No censorship. The image wasn't pixelated. It was too clear, like it had been taken with purpose. 4. Identify and label all the visible organs in the image below you will take first. My pen slipped from my hand. This wasn't an exam. This was something else. I tried to flip to the next page, to skip it, but I felt him behind me. Close. Too close. His body heat was right at my back. He was watching my hand. I gulped, labeled the most basic parts. Eyes, brain, sinuses, whatever I could, then flipped forward. The next page was worse. More images, vivid, bodies shredded beyond recognition. My stomach twisted. I almost puked. You have to answer everything to pass. His cold voice slithered into my ear. We don't want to fail, do we? Even though it was cold, I was sweating. 5. Name an object that could cause a human body to end up in this state. I stared at the blank space beneath. Acid. I moved on, bracing for something worse. 6. Circle the weapon you see first. A blurry, low-quality photo. Dark, hard to make out. Looked very confusing. But, there. An axe? I circled it, uneasy, then turned the page. 7. Choose a method you prefer to die by from question 1 to 6. Or wait till the time ends. My stomach dropped. I stared, frozen, hands trembling. I flipped the page. 8. Fulfill question 7. That was the only instruction. I understood now. I'd been writing my own death. 6 minutes left. I couldn't pick any of them. No. No. And I didn't want to wait for him to kill me either. I can't pass this exam. I will die if I pass, and I don't think I'll gain anything by failing. I think. I stood quietly, tried to leave. So, his cold voice behind me. You want to fail? I bolted. He caught me easily, like he knew I would run. He looked at the clock. Since you won't answer, your examiner will choose. His grip tightened. I struggled, kicking wildly. My legs buckled beneath panic. I didn't want to die, especially not like that. He smiled, calm, casual. Sit down. You haven't answered question 7. No, I want to fail. He shoved me back into the seat. I have to make sure my students don't fail. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a lighter. My chest seized. His thumb hovered over the spark wheel. You kids always write fire. So I come prepared. Before he could strike the flame, I kicked him hard. He did get hurt, but not enough. Then another kick, the square of his crotch. I even used my nails, screams, anything that would make him slow down. And kicking his stomach was the answer. He screamed. I ran for the door after one last kick. Tugged the handle, locked. Shit. I spun around. He was already recovering. 1 minute left. My eyes scanned. How do I escape? Where is the opening? The window. 3rd floor it was. My brain screamed to jump off. But 3rd floor? Screw it. I don't want to die from any of those methods in the question paper. I sprinted. I shoved a desk behind me, slammed shoulder first into the glass. I don't remember the landing, only waking up in a hospital bed, alive. The first few days blurred together. My family visited later. It felt safe enough to relax. I wasn't sure what happened, why that exam even existed, until day 3. The academy counselor came, with the police. They handed me my exam paper. I had failed. They apologized, said even with high security, they'd lost more students, injured them. Yes, more students. I wasn't alone in that classroom, apparently. Me along with 3 more students were present. We can't interact because our room numbers are different, but he can. The gruesome photos I saw, victims of the teacher, students before me who attended the exam, the ones who passed, and the teacher, dead for 5 years, a serial killer who used to run his own entrance exams, targeting students. He liked the ones who showed up late or too early. Said a student once managed to kill him in self-defense. But even in death, he returns. Those who passed never return. When the police left, I sat in silence, rethinking all the moments. When my phone buzzed, one new message. Name, Alexander Grade, F. And for the first time in my life, I was relieved to fail. Story number 6. They say the mind forgets to protect itself eventually, that it tires, that the doors it locks start to come unlatched, one by one, until the house of you isn't a house anymore, just a hall of echoes and dust. I think that's what's happening to me. It began with a smell, not rot, not death, not even mildew, bleach and static. You think static doesn't have a smell, but it does. Burnt ozone, a scorched kind of silence. It came from the wall behind my headboard. Just a whisper at first, then a steady hum, then words, whispers, muffled and halting, like someone speaking through gauze, like they'd forgotten how to breathe. One syllable always stood out. 0. Over and over. Sometimes it sounded like a name. I live alone. I keep things simple. Everything in my apartment is cream, beige, or gray. Unobtrusive. Clean. My memories don't like clutter. Or maybe I don't. But things began appearing. Small things. A Polaroid photo tucked into the fridge. It showed a hallway. Unfamiliar. But somehow it felt like something I'd dreamt before. In the photo's corner, written in red ink, Room 0. Then I found a postcard I never bought, depicting a building with no windows. Behind it, a caption, "You checked in. Why haven't you left?" I couldn't sleep. I started hearing a soft click at night, like a slide carousel turning behind my eyes. Images I didn't recognize flashing in my head. A bed with no sheets. A doorknob melting. My own hand holding a key made of bone. The number 0 carved into my arm. I checked. There was no scar. But sometimes, in certain lighting, the skin itched in the shape of a circle. On the 5th night, I woke up standing in a hallway. Not mine. Everything was a little too tall, a little too soft around the edges, like someone had poorly reconstructed reality from memory. The walls pulsed slightly, breathing. There were no doors, just brass plates, every few feet, each one engraved with a different version of the same number. 0, 0, 0, null. I tried to turn back, but behind me, nothing. No door, no sound, just silence that bent inward. I chose a plate at random and pushed. The wall gave, like flesh, and I tumbled into a room identical to mine, only not. The light was wrong, too gray, like morning under a migraine. Everything was clean, but flattened, like it had been painted onto a memory and forgotten to dry. The photographs started appearing everywhere now, on the nightstand, pinned to the walls, inside the cereal box. Always the same hallway, always that damned number. Some were blank, except for a phrase. "He's trying to remember you." I don't know who he is. But last night, I heard him knocking from inside the wall. Not on it, from within it. I pressed my ear close. This time, he spoke clearly. "You forgot," he said, but I didn't. Then I blinked, and I was in a room with no walls, just infinite brass doors hanging in black space, and a carousel screen blinking images above me like a god's slideshow. Me screaming, me weeping, me older, me with no face, and there, across the void, a figure watching. I couldn't see his face, just the glint of brass where his eyes should be. He held something in his hand, a photograph. He showed it to me. It was me, in a straitjacket, mouth open, screaming, a brass number bolted to my chest, patient 0. That's when I realized I haven't been trying to escape. I've been trying to wake up, but this place doesn't have an exit. It only has more rooms, and each one knows me better than the last. Because I built this place, and I forgot I was still inside. Story number 7. I work at a national state park, and we've recently had a string of incidents that all started after my crew, and I saw 3 toads. We were cleaning out a campsite when my coworker, T, found 3 cute little toads under a pile of wood. We moved the little creatures, and we thought that was that. On our way back to the maintenance shop that day, our cart's belt blew out. Of course, there could be a million reasons, but we decided to blame the 3 toads we encountered, calling them a sign of bad things to come. If we only knew how right we were going to be. The next thing to happen after seeing 3 toads was a jump from a blown belt. T and I were cleaning out a bathroom when we saw 3 of those little bastards in it. We moved them with the broom and finished up our morning routine. That's when the bad things started to come. Over the radio we heard, "Missing boy, last seen running from concessions." The entire maintenance department went right to looking, and unfortunately we never did find him. The search lasted about 2 weeks, before the state came to the conclusion he had fallen off one of the cliffs into the water and drowned. Most of us accepted this as it seemed the most realistic, as we did have quite a few cliffs that dropped off into the lake the park was known for. I say most of us, as there was one worker who has been there for quite a while, said it was that goddamn Toad King. That's where that boy went. One day at lunch, now I'm one for the supernatural and cryptozoology, but that just sounded silly. I brushed it off and went on with my day, and so did everyone else. The next incident came, and they came fast. One crew would come in and say they found 3 toads at Shelter 2, or 3 toads were hanging around their carts after lunch. Now for my animal lovers, this is where you should stop reading. Those same crews would respond to a call about an animal's body being found strung about in the trees or on the beach. This had never happened before, and we couldn't figure out anything these incidents had in common besides the 3 toads. That's when I approached the old man, who said something about the Toad King. "Jay, what is the Toad King? You mentioned it when that little boy went missing." "The Toad King is the protector of the town of..." He has haunted this state park since the state itself decided to drown the town of... So the city down the road had water running to it. After that conversation, I was left with a few unanswered questions, but there was a storm on the horizon. 3 co-workers had been attacked by what I assume is the creature known as the Toad King. Z was the first. He had come to me after he cleaned the beach house and told me the following. "Hey P, I have a question. Are the 3 toads being bad omens a thing?" I told him I didn't know and that the new hires believed it, but I told him I didn't think it had too much weight to it. We worked in a state park, and they aren't exactly known for being the most normal places. Bad things happen all over the world. We just got unlucky and were dealing with a lot. He simply nodded his head and went off to clean up some campsites. A couple of hours later, we found his cart, with no sign of him being around. After that, the feds got involved and started monitoring our park 24/7 and made, at the very least, a 2-man team mandatory. The next attack happened with a co-worker who worked a lot in a 3-man group. I don't know how many state parks follow a grid pattern, but we are supposed to split up, but be within earshot of each other when clearing out the woods. Almost like a 3x3 box, with each passing 3 boxes. Anyways, this group is clearing out the woods, and the one who is attacked is nowhere to be found when they meet the end of their boxes. The other 2 go off looking in the woods, screaming for their friend, but with no luck or sign of him in sight. By the time most of the maintenance crew arrives to help with the search, the feds and SNR teams are leaving with no signs of going back in to look for our lost crewmate. Nobody asked, but I heard through the grapevine that the group had run into 3 toads during the morning shift. Now, I had mentioned 3 co-workers getting attacked, and have only gone over 2. The 3rd person who was attacked survived, and is currently in a mental institution. I took this attack personally, as this was one of my members of the 3-man team that T and I started. A was a new addition after the rules were implemented, and he fit right in. When we encountered those damn toads, I knew shit was going to hit the fan, but I didn't think any of us would get attacked. We had gotten slammed with assignments during the day, so we were cleaning out campsites when it was dark out. We arrived to the site that started all of this. T would point this out later on, and found 3 toads just sitting there, like they were waiting for us. I passed out, and T said he heard something to the right of us, leaving A with my body alone. When T came back, A was screaming in the water, fighting with something, and that's when T ran into the water to help our crewmate out. They made it, but A was left with severe mental scars. He tried committing while he was in the hospital. He kept screaming about the things it showed him. I always told myself I would make sure everyone comes home before we clock out. I can't help but feel like I failed. All of them, not just A. The supervisors don't acknowledge anything. The suits have left, and we don't get many campers. If we do, it's just because any other park around is booked, and they're looking for a quick night's rest. As for why I'm posting this, it's how all of this started. We're closing soon, permanently or just for the season, I don't know. I've been camping at sites by the water, in hopes of recreating the first time we encountered its call sign. And wouldn't you know it, while I was cleaning out the bathroom, 3 toads were hopping around. It's 9:03 p.m., and I see movement in the water. It's just me, my father's revolver, and whatever lurks below the depths. This is a warning. The state parks are not safe, and neither am I. Story number 8. Nor a ghost hunter, nor anything like that. I'm just a guy trying to understand what happened last week. Maybe by putting this here, I can sleep a bit better when night comes. To begin with, I'm a freelance translator. My specialty is old documents like contracts, wills, parish records, etc. It's a very specific job, as you can imagine, but it pays well. With that in mind, I nearly fell over when I saw how much my client was willing to pay me, not to mention covering lodging and transport, to review some 18th century papers written in archaic German, probably land titles, which needed to be deciphered urgently. The place, a tiny village tucked away in the Alps called Steinwald. I accepted immediately. Good money, a chance to see a different place, and maybe even go skiing a bit and drink some hot chocolate. Naive, right? I took a packed train to a bigger city, and then a tiny bus that climbed up the frozen, winding mountain roads. I arrived in Steinwald at night. The driver dropped me off in an empty square and left without even turning off the engine. I found it odd, but the cold didn't let me think too much about it, so I made sure to find the inn where I'd be staying. I walked along the quiet cobblestone streets, hardly a soul in sight, a comforting peace emanating from the dark night, the dense forest, and the mountain air surrounding me. I stopped in front of the small guest house, the words, "Rooms available," scribbled in red marker on a small wooden sign. In a few of the region's common languages, I stepped inside and was immediately flooded by the warmth of the house. The smell of eucalyptus crackling in the fireplace filled my nose and my spirit. The lady behind the counter smiled when she saw me, her green eyes blending with the yellowish reflection of the lights. "Hello, dear," she said kindly. "You must be Maxwell, right?" "Yes, that's me," I replied. "Very good. I've been expecting you." She rummaged through some things as I walked closer. "Here's the key to your room. It's number 23, second floor." I was about to go upstairs when she let out a surprised sigh, as if remembering something important. "Wait!" she shouted. "Wait!" I looked at her in surprise. "Here, read this, please." She handed me a paper printed on what I assume was a mimeograph, some kind of local press. I just nodded as I went upstairs, making a mental note to read it before going to bed. I entered the small room, a cozy little shelter indeed. The window looked out onto the town square, its flickering lampposts in the snow contrasting with the darkness of the night sky and its twinkling lights. I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress creaking under my weight. My body was sore and exhausted from the trip. The bundle of papers I was supposed to translate was already sitting on a desk in the opposite corner, and I stared at it, thinking, I'll start tomorrow. Then I remembered the paper the lady had given me, letting the yellow lamplight illuminate the slightly smudged letters. It was a notice, an obituary, pretty common in small towns like this. Apparently, an important member of the community had died. His name was Hermann Blatzer, father of many here, according to the text. The name sounded familiar. I racked my brain trying to remember until I looked at the desk again. Of course, it made sense. He was the owner of those deeds. I turned the page, after a brief biography about his role in founding Steinwald. At the top of this second page, written in stylized Gothic letters, instructions for the awakening of the deceased. What? I read the rest. 1. Attend the hall before the first chant and do not leave until the final bell. 2. Touch the body with your right hand 3 times, in silence. 3. Do not laugh. 2. Loudly. 4. If he calls your name, do not answer. 5. When leaving, do not look back, no matter what you hear. I stared at that for a good few minutes. My German is good, but I confess I read it 2 or 3 times to be sure of what I was reading. I sighed, left the paper on the nightstand, and threw myself onto the bed. I figured it must be some strange local custom, a folkloric ritual of sorts. You'd be surprised how weird country folks can be. Maybe they did it to say goodbye with humor, or to ease the weight of death. Soon, exhaustion overcame me, and I fell asleep, with the wind brushing the window to lull me. I was woken up hours later by a persistent sound at the door. 3 sharp knocks. I looked at the clock. 11:45 p.m. I got up, staggering, groggy with sleep, wondering what it could be. But then I remembered the leaflet, and a different kind of chill ran down my spine. It wasn't the mountain cold, but something more primal, what Rudolf Otto might have called the tremendum. I got up slowly, the cold floor freezing my feet. I put on my thick socks and opened the door. On the other side was the same lady from the reception, now wrapped in a dark green shawl. Her smile seemed a bit more tense. "Come, my dear. We're about to begin," she said, in an almost conspiratorial whisper as she handed me a heavy fur coat. I sort of understood her. I went downstairs, outside, The village was bathed in torchlight, the flames fixed to iron holders stuck in the snow. Small groups of about 5 people each walked silently toward a community hall, a stone building with long windows from which an orange glow spilled out. The wind carried sparks to where I stood, cutting into the skin of my cheeks. The lady led me to the entrance. A huge man, dressed in a dark fur coat like mine, greeted me with a restrained nod and opened the door. Inside, I caught a strong smell of burning wax and rosemary. The hall was packed. Men and women sat scattered on long benches, murmuring to each other. Children ran back and forth, but always in circles, never passing close to the center of the hall, where, on top of an oak table, lay the body of Hermann Blatzer. They had dressed the corpse in a white robe that reached his feet, adorned with small red ribbons on the sleeves and collar. His face, instead of stiff and colorless, looked strangely more relaxed, almost serene. His hands were uncrossed, palms facing up, as if waiting for something. A chorus of female voices began to chant a simple, repetitive melody, almost childlike. The lady who had brought me nudged my arm, discreetly pointing to the body. I knew what I had to do. It was on the list. I took a deep breath, walked up to the corpse. My right hand felt like lead, but I stretched it out anyway and touched his cold chest. 3 times. The fabric was rough, damp in some spots, maybe from the moisture in the room, or I didn't want to think too much about it. I was already scared enough to feed my mind's paranoia. I backed away quickly, feeling my face flush, maybe from shame or fear. I sat down on a bench further away, trying to look indifferent, like a mere spectator of local traditions, a stranger politely attending a strange ritual. The women's voices stopped so abruptly it was almost painful to my ears. A brief silence filled the hall, broken only by the crackling of the giant candles dripping long threads of wax onto the stone floor. Then, as if someone had given an invisible sign, people began to approach the table, in small groups, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time. Each did something different. A young woman leaned over Hermann's face and whispered something quickly, like a secret. A thin, hunched old man poked the dead man's belly with 2 fingers, the almost playful gesture clashing with the strangeness of it all. Some children were brought by their mothers. I saw a little boy, maybe 6 years old, pinch the dead man's bare arm and then recoil, eyes wide, as if he really expected him to react. And God, I think they did expect it. A fat, flushed man came up next, his face red and eyes gleaming, maybe from drink. He slapped Hermann's shoulder hard, almost laughing, and shouted something way too loud for the mood of the room. "Wake up, you old pig! You're not going to leave us hanging now, are you?" There was a brief chorus of muffled laughs, quickly stifled. The fat man stepped back, wiping his hands on his dark tunic, while glancing around quickly, maybe checking if he'd gone too far. Then it was the men's chorus. 4 burly men formed a half circle in front of the dead man and began to sing a deeper, heavier melody, almost liturgical. Their voices made my chest vibrate slightly. Hermann stayed there, still, but something felt different. I swear I saw a slight twitch in his fingers. My heart started pounding. I remembered the leaflet. The paper felt like it weighed a ton in my pocket. I found myself gripping it inside my pocket, like it was a talisman. The rough texture of the mimeographed leaflet anchored me to the present, to the material, while the men's chant seemed to pull my spirit somewhere cold and hollow. Hermann remained still, but the fingers? No, I wasn't losing my mind. They moved. A slight tick, almost imperceptible, like someone dreaming and stirring in bed. No one seemed to notice, or they chose not to. The men's chant faded, dying out in a collective sigh. The hall returned to being just the sound of dripping candles and the wind outside. Then came what disturbed me most. An old man, with a long white beard split into 2 thin braids, walked up to Herman, carrying a small bronze bell. He stopped beside the body, lifted the bell high, and rang it 3 times. The sound was sharper than I expected, too metallic. I couldn't help but cover my ears. When the echo finally died out, he stepped even closer to the corpse and said something quietly, so quietly I could only catch one word: Zaruk. Come back. He then closed his eyes and recited what sounded like a short prayer. The whole hall joined in with dragging murmurs. I tried not to move, barely breathing. That's when I felt a sudden twinge deep in my gut, like something had lightly tugged me from the inside. I opened my eyes, which I didn't even remember closing, and saw that Herman's hands were closing, his fingers curling slowly, tense, as if grasping something invisible. A collective gasp rippled through the room. A woman brought her hands to her mouth, stifling a scream. Then the dead man's eyes opened, not all at once, but peeling open like someone fighting through centuries of dust. First thin slits, then wide open, revealing gray, cloudy pupils that slowly wandered around the hall until they stopped on me. I shrank back on the bench, unable to move. Herman's mouth opened in a grimace that was almost a smile, but twisted, as if he didn't quite remember how to do it. His thick purple tongue slipped between his lips, letting out a wet, slurred sound. I was already trembling when, in a hoarse whisper, he said, "Max." Well, that was the most primal moment of fear I've ever felt. Instinct told me to answer, to say, "Yes, what is it?" like an idiot. But panic kept me silent. The list, that damned list, hammered in my head. If he calls your name, do not answer. Herman seemed confused for a moment, his head tilted to the side, mouth trembling, until he let out a guttural sound, almost a sob, and started babbling incoherent words. Then, as fast as lightning, he lunged off the table, charging at me. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my throat was frozen shut. I could feel his cold touch on me, tearing open the coat and exposing my skin to the hall's air. He was shouting and shouting like a madman, thick drool dripping onto my face, sending me into a frenzy of terror and disgust. Honestly, I don't know how I didn't just drop dead right there from sheer terror. Herman's screams echoed in my head, ringing far closer than I wanted them to. His breath was cold, damp, smelled like something halfway between almonds and mold. I felt rough fingers, hard as roots, clutch my shoulder and dig their nails, or what was left of them, into my skin through the coat. He shook his head from side to side, foaming and moaning words that made no sense to me. Amid the rush of sounds, I could make out fragments, dragged laments spoken in that tongue, too heavy for a dead mouth. Verben, mein Erbe, nicht. Sie haben mich. Sie betrogen. I only understood one word clearly, repeated more than once in a whisper so mournful it chilled my bones. Erben, Erben, inheritance, heirs. At that moment, someone yanked me back violently. I fell on my back, landing hard on a stone and smashing my tailbone. Lights danced before my eyes, and pain shot up my spine, making me let out a howl. I saw men holding Herman down, trying to restrain him, tying ropes around his chest and arms like they were binding an animal. He kept screaming, his wide eyes locked on me, until 3 others showed up carrying torches. Someone clapped a rough, heavy hand over my eyes and whispered in my ear, in an almost fatherly tone, "Don't look at this, Junge. For your soul's sake, don't look." I was lifted by the armpits and dragged out of the hall. The freezing air slapped my face like a whip. My knees were too weak to hold me up, so I had to steady myself against a wooden post soaked by melting snow. In the distance, I heard Herman howl, then the muffled sound of something heavy being dragged. And the chanting came back, now even stronger, smothering any other sound from inside. I don't know how I got back to the inn. I have flashes of the old lady guiding me by the arm, whispering comforting words that meant nothing to my numb mind. I just know I woke up in my room, the lamp still on, the leaflet crumpled in my sweaty hand. I was trembling so hard I could barely let go of the paper. The next morning, I left Steinwald on the first bus I could find. No one stopped me. No one said a word. I told my client, and he agreed to let me take a copy of those documents to translate remotely. It was only days later, already at home, reading those old wills, that I realized. In the middle of the moldy paragraphs about land, debts, and possessions, I found an addition written in shaky, more recent handwriting. It said something like, "If any of my children dare betray me, taking for themselves what is not rightfully theirs, may my voice find its way back and demand what is mine. May they be marked by my memory." In the list of heirs, there was the name of the firstborn, underlined several times. Just below, a municipal stamp confirmed his death just a few weeks before his father. But that wasn't what truly froze my blood. It was seeing the other names on the list: 2 younger brothers, a son and a youngest daughter, and a distant nephew, all alive, all with registered addresses in Steinwald. As I read them, a cold shiver ran through me. I recognized those names. The innkeeper lady was Herman's daughter, my client, her younger brother. And then I remembered what Herman had babbled that night, and now I could fully understand his words as his cloudy eyes locked onto mine, repeating between sobs, "Sie haben mich betrogen, meine Kinder, meine Erben. They betrayed me, my children, my heirs." Suddenly everything made a terrible kind of sense. Maybe it wasn't just old age that killed Herman. Maybe that night was the desperate cry of a man betrayed, who saw his own blood turn against him and his firstborn. I can still feel his touch. Ever since I understood this, I haven't slept properly. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I feel a weight at the edge of my bed, like someone is sitting there, watching me. The mattress sinks slightly, but when I turn on the light, there's nothing there, just the outline of a damp stain on the sheet. I don't know what Herman wants from me. Maybe for me to bring him justice? I don't know. I've tried to contact my client and the innkeeper lady, but ever since I got paid, neither has responded. I hope that by writing this, by telling others Herman's story, his spirit might find the peace it needs, and leave me in peace once and for all. Story number 9. Recently, I've seen creepy stories of mysterious creatures living in the depths of the Appalachian mountains blow up on TikTok. So I wanted to share some stories I have of when I lived there. So, to set the scene, I used to have a house on the Maryland side of the Appalachian mountains. We were pretty much completely stranded there, as the nearest neighbor was around 15 miles away. So we had to either go on huge supply runs to the nearest supermarket, which was even farther away, or hunt for food ourselves. Also, I forgot to mention, my mom always dreamt of going into a house or cabin in the deep woods, so we decided to live there for me and my sister's summer. Anyway, we alternated between hunting and going for supply runs. Now I'll start telling the stories. The first one is when me and my mom went for a hike through the woods and found an abandoned Wild West amusement park called Ghost Town, probably like 20 minutes into the hike. Once we got there, we got a weird feeling that I cannot physically describe with words. like it just somehow appeared in front of us. Then probably no more than 15 minutes later, we found a huge, abandoned hospital. We never knew it for the rest of our stay, but those two buildings were the ghost town village located in North Carolina and the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. We started in Maryland, somehow ended up in North Carolina, and then got to West Virginia and got back to Maryland in less than 2 hours. We stayed surrounded by woods the whole time, not crossing or seeing a single road. That was just the start of the weird shit that happened. The next story is when my mom took me and my sister to a supply run. And while we were driving, we saw a man with a thick jacket, glasses, a balaclava over his face, and a bicycle helmet trying to hitchhike with his thumb out. It was the middle of summer. Me and my sister told my mom to just keep driving, but she pulled over in the road and asked the guy, "Sir, are you okay?" He didn't respond. "Why are you out here dressed like that?" The man finally spoke, but something was off. His voice didn't sound like it belonged to him. It was too high, like it was put through a voice changer. "Ma'am, can I get a ride?" Completely disregarding my mom's question, I looked around him and noticed he had no bike, no car, no hiking stick, no backpack, no nothing. Just those clothes. I whispered to my mom to keep driving, and as soon as the man saw that she was trying to drive away, he let out an animalistic, inhuman scream and started to run towards us. My mom floored it to the nearest police station and reported the guy, but they never found him. On our way back to the house, we were on extreme edge, but nothing happened. Then that night, I woke up to a tapping sound on my window, and woke up to the same man standing straight up with his hands on the glass. I lived on the second floor. Now, he didn't have his sunglasses on. He also didn't have his eyes. When I noticed it, it immediately fell, and when I looked out my window for it, I didn't see anything. No man, no creature, nothing. Like he just disappeared. I was so shocked and scared I hid under my covers the rest of the night, even though I was 16 at the time. I peeked my head up occasionally to make sure he never came back. Then in the morning I told my mom about it, but it's not like she could do anything about it. The police would never find it, and my parents weren't going out there. This was terrifying, but nothing compared to the next story. I forgot to mention, but we had a dog named Mac. He was a golden retriever and was super friendly and helped us retrieve the animal carcasses when we hunted. One day I was out hunting with my dad, and we killed a couple rabbits and sent Mac to go get them. But we heard him bark, like he was telling us to go to him instead. We walked over to where he was barking and saw a tree covered with dead-skinned rabbits, each with a shark stick through their head and their eyes removed with a weird symbol carved into the tree. We were speechless and covered our mouths in shock, and then we heard someone whisper to us, "Hey guys, come over here." We hooked up Mac to his emergency leash and ran as fast as we could to our house. I looked behind me for who whispered to us and saw a man with a huge smile on his face and his eyes as wide as possible for a human to open them, staring at me, and then began to run towards us with a knife. My dad grabbed his hand pistol and shot him in the leg, and he fell to the floor while yelling in pain. Once we reached the house, we called the police and told them about it, and they sent multiple officers to search the area, but found nothing. Not the rabbits, no blood, no knife, no fingerprints, not even the rabbits we killed. For the next couple months, we stayed in a relative's house. None of us felt safe anymore. But my dad, the one who shot the crazy man, was the only one who insisted we stay. Said we could defend ourselves. Said it was just another crazy and that we should stay the rest of the summer. We agreed, but said if anything else weird or terrifying happens, we go to our house in the city. Then, the final story is what made us finally move out. One Saturday, I woke up and saw my mom missing from the house. My dad and sister said she was just going on an errand, and that she'll be back in the afternoon. Afternoon came, and she got back. Nothing else eventful happened that day, until night struck. We let Mac out. We just thought he was going to go to the bathroom and come back, but we heard him run away deep into the woods, like he was chasing something. I don't know why we didn't chase after him, even after our creepy encounters before this. When he got back, he wasn't energetic. He wasn't acting like him at all. He was mopey, sad, and acting really weird. Normally, we would have just assumed he saw something in the woods that made him upset. But after the previous events, we were on edge. Then when we all fell asleep, I woke up to footsteps coming up the stairs. I peeked out my door and saw Mac, standing up like a human, his fur gray, his arms longer than they should be, and his head twisted and upright. His walking wasn't right either. He would walk one step, and his body would flop in the direction he stepped. He wasn't walking towards anything either, just roaming the hallway. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I called my sister, and after calling her 4 times, she finally picked up. I don't remember anything I said to her, but what I do remember is sneaking behind the thing, pretending to be Mac, and met up with my sister. Luckily, the rest of my family slept downstairs, so once I met up with my sister, we were able to wake our parents without going past it. Logically, we stayed in the nearest hotel for the night. We had to go back and get our stuff, though, so we went back to the house and found it trashed. The food in the fridge was scattered all over the house, and once we got our stuff, we drove away. I looked back to the house and saw the man, the thing in the winter clothes, staring at me. It was the thing pretending to be Mac. We drove back to our city house and never stepped foot into woods again. You survived, for now. But the shadows aren't done with you yet. If this story gave you chills, like the video, share it with someone who dares to watch and comment your thoughts, especially if you're watching in the dark. Subscribe to Spectral, Shadows, where fear never sleeps, and the next nightmare is always waiting. We'll be watching.